This is Open to Hope Radio, featuring Dr. Gloria Horsley and her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley, coming to you on behalf of the Open to Hope Foundation, dedicated to those who are looking for hope after loss. Now, here's Dr. Gloria.
Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my co-host, Dr. Heidi Horsley. Well, Heidi, good morning from California.
Good afternoon, Mom, from New York City. We're going to talk about the loss of a twin and twinless twins today. And our guest today is Dorothy Foltz-Gray. Dorothy is the author of 5 books, including With and Without Her, a memoir of being and losing a twin. She is a winner of the Tennessee Arts Commission Poetry Fellowship and other awards. She has written for magazines such as the Oprah Magazine, Bon Appetit, More, and Real Simple. She is an author of Open to Hope, so you can read a lot of her stuff right on our website. And she just received honorable mention in the Los Angeles Book Festival for her book. So welcome to the show, Dorothy.
Hi, Dorothy.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to be here. In 1981, in August 1981, she was coming to visit me that day, and I received a call that she had been shot by one of her patients. She was a psychologist in Lowell, Massachusetts, and she lived for 10 days. Another doctor was killed at the scene, and another social worker was injured and survived. She lost an eye. So there were, and I think another person, a bullet grazed another person. So there were one person killed, and I mean two people killed, and another seriously wounded.
And I want to say what happened to the perpetrator right now, because I want to get him out of the way, and people are going to want to know.
Oh yes, okay, of course. We did not know this for months, but that day after the shooting, he drove into the woods of New Hampshire and into a very desolated part, and got out of his car and walked, and then killed himself. So we didn't know that for months, and my husband was very frightened because we were afraid that he would come after this face, the same face that he had killed.
Wow, so Dorothy, that's powerful.
We had the FBI involved. I didn't know that at the time. I was just in shock. But my husband had told my father. My father notified the FBI to get some protection because he was still out there.
How old was Dean at the time?
We were both 32.
Talk a little bit about how twins see each other.
Well, you don't really do that because you do it and you don't do it. But, Dean's face was Dean's face, until I would, after she died, I looked in the mirror and there was Dean, and I would start to cry when I would look in the mirror because there she was, and then Dean would start to cry. So it became much more powerful effect after she died. When she was alive, Dean's face was Dean's face, until we'd get confused in looking at pictures. But
you talk about that when you weren't sure who was who.
We got lost in a house of mirrors, and Dean and I kept smashing into the mirrors because we thought we had found each other. I thought of Dean as Dean. You know how you don't, you live from your inside out. You don't, your sense of yourself comes from the inside. And so, when I look at Dean, I wouldn't see myself. I would see Dean. But I think what was very disturbing, you asked me to talk about the ICU. What was both very disturbing and also gratifying was that because I had a terrible case of poison ivy, I got to meet the very same emergency crew that had tended Dean, and because they were so used to dealing with death and loss, they were able to show me their sort of simple happiness in the fact at how much we looked alike, that they had been the last to see it, because by the time I got to see Dean, she no longer looked like either of us. Her head was very swollen, her face was very swollen and bruised. I mean, it was not her anymore. And when I had the experience of looking in the mirror, it was both. It was both comforting because there she was. It was both comforting and distressing. And then I think one of the things that I've had to deal with is, as you age, your looks evolve. And so my face is no longer the face of my girlhood. And so it's no longer Dean's face either. And someone asked me, is she still young in your dreams? Because I dream about her still. And it's a good question. I guess so. It's hard to answer. My parents called me Dean after Dean died, and other people would call me Dean or confuse me. And I think that was their own. I was the conduit to, just my face was the conduit to Dean.
When I was reading about her being in intensive care with your family, at one point you were a little cranky with your mother because you wanted to be alone with her.
Yes, it's a moment I'm not proud of, but it was a bit of an issue when Dean was alive too. In other words, I think for my mother, it doesn't happen to most mothers. I think for my mother, she felt a little left out. Dean and I were everything we needed, and we left her out in a way that I think it doesn't happen with most daughters and mothers. And we had a completeness that I think was hard for my mother to compete with. And so in a way that I think it was an old annoyance, but I'm ashamed of it at that moment. I should feel it also. But I so desperately wanted to just lean down to her and say whatever I needed to say, or just be close to her, hold her hand without my mother there. And I know I hurt my mother doing that.
But Dorothy, I also think that's very normal. I've read a lot about twinless twins, and I've heard those kind of sentiments. And I also heard someone say, when I saw my brother in the casket and I was his identical twin, I felt like I should get in with him and join him because we had come into the world, and it was weird to not be leaving the world together.
Absolutely. A big confusion for a long time. Absolutely.
Talk about the swimming story. I think that is such a kick.
We learned to swim when we were really young, and my mother always wanted us to be in races. And so finally we agreed that we would be in a race, and it was a relay race, and I was the first swimmer, and to my absolute horror, I won the race, which meant that I was going to have to race again. And so I went to Dean and I said, "You are going to have to do it." and so she did.
I love
she
it.
raced in my place, and no one knew it.
Did she win? Did she win, Dorothy?
No, she didn't. No, she didn't. Then it was over,
Well, one of the things that you talk about, too, which is interesting, is the difficulty in having intimate relationships with people because you've been so connected with your twin and you're looking for that kind of intensity or love or whatever.
I think so. It's kind of a gift and a burden. I mean, I think when you have been a twin, you really understand intimacy in a different way than a lot of people do. And so I knew it when I saw it, and I think it also raised the bar on, I felt that other people I was trying to get close to should behave as my sister did, should almost be able to read my mind and be as close. And I've had to learn that that's not, the most of the world doesn't operate that way. I've had to learn a little bit more social distance, although I'm still not all that good at it. It seems to me that when I hear about twins now, that their mothers are much more tuned in about putting them in separate classes, dressing them differently, making sure that they're nurtured along individual lines, and I think that's very healthy. We had to work, and thank goodness we did. We had to work very hard as young adults to separate from each other.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Oh, Dorothy, tell people your website and how to get your book and all that.
Oh, well, you can go to www.dorothyfoltzgray.com, and there are several options for getting my book. I've put the wonderful independent bookstores that have had me for readings. There are links to them, as well as to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and so forth.
Have a good day, and thanks for listening, and God bless.
You've been listening to Open to Hope Radio, hosted by Drs. Gloria and Heidi Horsley. Like today's edition, all of our past programs are available on demand at opentohope.com, along with helpful articles, videos, resources, and links to help get you through the toughest time of your life. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter and sign up for our monthly newsletter. Again, that's opentohope.com. Check it out today. Then be sure to stop by next Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time when we'll be posting another edition of Open to Hope Radio. Remember, others have been where you are. They made it through, and you can too, as long as you're open to hope.